Episode 10 begins with Sakura's dream again. So the sequence begins with Sakura in her return outfit, standing in the brick archway just like it was before in the last episode. And not just that, she was looking at the three figures that were at the cherry blossom tree. But then the image changed to a strange looking creature with a red diamond shape on his head. Next, we see Sakura running in a wooded area surrounded in falling leaves, just like she did before. And then finally, just like before, Sakura was running through the hallway of the house. But then when she stopped to look inside of the open door, just like before, she sees the same strange looking creature that's flying around, the same creature that has the strange red diamond shape on his head, that it's attacking her. And then back in her present, when Sakura woke up in her upstairs room at the Avalon residence, she hears the alarm going off on her alarm clock. So as Sakura was sitting up in bed wondering what's that dream all about and what was going on, she just couldn't help but what's going on in her head. Then meanwhile, Eli was busy sewing in the big red chair, of course. Now watching Eli sewing was Spinner, and he wanted to know, is that your costume you were making over there for the bazaar? That's correct, Eli said. Then moments later, Ruby shows up. And she says, hey everyone, what's going on? The first thing Eli did was to say hello to her. Now it's Spinner's turn to ask Ruby a question of where she's been lately. So Ruby wanted to know from Spinner, what's the matter? Don't you miss me or something? Well, Spinner got upset with Ruby because she just called him Spinny and not his full name. And let's just say he got annoyed with it. Then it's Ruby's turn to plead her case to say, I knew that. But in my case, I think your nickname sounds a lot cuter, don't you think? But instead of answering Ruby's question, let's just say Spinner's not exactly happy about it. So Eli says, oh, by the way, Ruby, I got some good news. Sakura School's having a bazaar the next day. And so Eli suggested if Ruby should tag along. So he asked her that. So Ruby asked him why, for what reason. Well, Eli just told Ruby that there's something even better. There's a bake sale that's going on. Then Eli says, oh, there's something else. We're keeping an eye on you. After Ruby thought about what Eli said and said, splendid, great, I'll be there, she said. So Ruby made a suggestion with Spinner that they should go together at the bake sale. But Spinner declined, and when Ruby asked him why, and that's when he told her that he had more better things to do than to eat sweets. It's not good for him. So Ruby made a suggestion with Eli that if she's going, then so would he being Spinner. So then, after Spinner thought about what Ruby said, he says, well, then again, maybe Kero Barrels may be nearby, but then I think he may suspect me otherwise. But Eli told him, don't worry about it and let me handle it. Go ahead, go to the bake sale, he suggested. So meanwhile at Sakura's school, well, there's a bake sale at the bazaar that is going on from outside. And what's even better is that Sakura's inside helping her best friend Madison. Of course, as always, long story short, Madison has it all on her video camera. And so she told Sakura, I just can't believe we have to wear these horrible outfits while doing this. But the best of it all is that the guys are wearing it too. Since Sakura was asking Madison, you didn't see Kero, did you? Because I made him promise that he'll stay behind the school. So Madison wants to know from Sakura, how did you manage that? Well, I did it with a whole basket full of treats, she said. Well, long story short, in Sakura's case, she's not wrong because there's Kero eating a basket full of treats, just as she said. It is now after 3 o'clock in the afternoon when back inside with Sakura, she said hello to Eli. So when Sakura had asked for a couple more cupcakes, that's when Eli agrees. And as Sakura was passing Lee by, Lee could sense that something was off. When Sakura looked over her shoulder to look at Lee, she asked what was going on. He then dismisses it and then said, "Never mind, it's nothing." So anyway, long story short, back with Sakura, she couldn't help but what's going on with Lee and why he was acting weird all of a sudden. And then by surprise, Sakura gets a couple of visitors, her brother Tori and his best friend Julian. You can tell that Sakura's not amused with her brother's visit and asks, "What are you doing here?" "Well," Julian explains, "I'm here for the cookies, actually." Long story short, after Sakura was not amused with her brother's cruel joke, Julian wants to know what did Sakura make for the bake sale. "Why, ginger snaps, of course," Sakura said, and then Sakura suggested that she should get 'em. So after Sakura heads off, Julian looks out the window and senses something really weird, but he's not the only one because Tori sensed that something was weird out there too. So Julian wanted to know from his best friend Tori what was he looking at and what was going on. Then long story short, Tori at first was going to tell his best friend, but then he changes his mind. Then Eli, who was looking at Tori, pleaded himself a case that Tori is on to him and sensed his presence somehow. And then he also said the next time he has to be more careful. Then long story short, back with Kero, he was busy feasting at a picnic basket until he heard someone that's coming towards him. So Kero knows what to do. He decided to hide in the picnic basket. Anyway, here comes Ruby and along with Spinner who was in her arms. So Ruby was asking Spinner if he was sure he didn't want any treats while he was there. "Now you know that I won't mind if I brought you some," Ruby said. So Spinner tells her that he's sure. So Ruby says, "Okay." "But you know the saying," Ruby says, "you just have no idea what you're missing." Before Ruby can head off, she told Spinner that she's going to try everything at the bake sale. So, before flying off, that's when Spinner told her, "Well, knock yourself out." And then he heads off. So before heading off, that's when Ruby tells Spinner, "I'll see you later." And then she runs off. And then she says, "I'll be by to pick you up." And so she heads off. So long story short, back with Kiro, who's still in the picnic basket, he wanted to make sure that Ruby had left. So now that he knows that the coast is clear, he comes out of the basket. Back with Spinner, he was looking for a quiet place where he can nap, or so he thought. Anyway, back with Kiro, who just got out of the picnic basket, he's now all alone, or so he thought. But just when Kiro was about to go back to the picnic basket, that's when he sees Spinner face to face for the first time. And then Spinner the other way around. He meets Kiro face to face for the first time. So now that Spinner and Kiro had met for the very first time face to face, that's when Spinner knew that this is not good news at all. So he pleaded himself a case to say if Kiro recognizes him in the form that he is now, it may connect him to Eli somehow, and this is a serious problem. So anyway, back with Spinner and Kiro, well, Kiro almost accidentally let slip in front of Spinner, or so he thought. And then Spinner had a second thought, and then he says that maybe I should put Eli's spell to the test after all. So back with Kiro, who continues to examine Spinner what he looked like, and he thought it was a stuffed toy, and etc. Anyway, Kiro continues to fly around and around and continues his examination on Spinner, and then he figured out who it was. So Spinner had pleaded himself a case to say, "Uh-oh, it looks like he figures me out already." So after Kiro says, "I know, you're a goblin, right?" But then Spinner says, "Oh, Vey, you gotta be kidding me," and then pleaded himself a case to say he has no idea who I am. So anyway, back with Kiro, he continues his conversation with Spinner to say, "You must be a goblin." And then he introduced himself and that he's the guardian beast of the seal and etc. And then, of course, Spinner had pleaded himself a case to say, "I just can't believe what I'm hearing, that this little guy is supposed to be the guardian beast." But on the other hand, Spinner claims his case that Eli's spell must be working than he thought, or so he thought so. So he thought maybe I should play along after all. So Kero has asked Spinner to introduce himself, and so he did. That was after Spinner claims his case to say maybe if I introduce myself, maybe he'll leave me alone. And so that's what happened. So after Spinner introduced himself, and Kero says, "Boy, that's the weirdest name I have ever heard." So after Spinner got upset with Kero laughing and humiliating him, so Kero says, "Well, it's nice to meet you." At first, Kero wanted to shake Spinner's hand after Spinner had claimed a case to say, "Well, my pleasure, I'm sure." But then Kero wanted to know what's going on with him. But then Spinner had a second thought and says, "Oh, nothing, nothing at all." And so both he and Kero shook hands. So after shaking hands, that's when Spinner claimed himself a case to say, "Well, it's better to be friends with Kero than to be suspicious. But on the other hand, Kero doesn't have a chance with me. So in my case, I think Eli would be very happy." Then Kero made a suggestion with Spinner and says, "What do you say you and I could eat out of the picnic basket together? What do you say we do that, huh?" The Spinner asked, "Did you say sweets?" "Of course," Kero says. "Don't be shy. There's plenty enough for both of us," he said. Then Spinner says, "Oh, I forgot to warn you. I'm not supposed to eat too many of these sweets." "Oh, come on. Have a bite. What's it gonna hurt?" Kero says. And so what Kero did is that he placed a candy bar into the mouth of Spinner, who he had just met. And Kero says, "Oh, don't go away. I'll be back with more sweets to see what else you like." But Spinner was still sitting there with a candy bar in his mouth. So when Kero came back with the rest of the sweets, so Kero says, "Oh, you're still working on that one, huh? Don't worry, I'll help with that." And so that's what he did. And so, one at a time, one by one, Kero had stuffed all the sweets inside of the mouth of Spinner while Spinner was just sitting there looking at him until finally at long last the entire picnic basket was empty. So when Carol sensed that something was off with Spinner, says, "What's going on with you?" "I would like some more," Spinner says. "I beg your pardon?" Carol asks. "I would like some more," Spinner says, and he started laughing uncontrollably and maniacally. But Carol says, "I'm sorry, but we're all out." But then when Spinner found out that he needed more to eat, so he flew off, with Carol catching up with him. So Carol says, "Hey, Spinner, wait for me." So we know what this means. Carol knows that he's in serious trouble. So meanwhile, back at school, it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And inside one of the classrooms were Ruby and Tori. And standing next to Julian, who's his best friend, is Sakura. So Ruby was asking Tori a question. "Isn't this nice?" "Of course it's nice," Tori said. So while that's going on, Sakura was asking Julian a question if he would like to have more cookies. "Of course," Julian said. "Oh, I would like some more too," Ruby said. "Of course," Sakura said, and then she heads off. So meanwhile, Eli was busy serving all the guests inside of the school's classroom, but only to find out that he sensed something was wrong with Spinner. So speaking of which, back with him, he's now outside of the school grounds eating everything in sight, including all the cookies and candy that was selling out in the bake sale. By the time the Kero arrived, he finds it weird that all the boxes of sweets were empty, and that Spinner had just left. So Kero was looking for Spinner anywhere, but he couldn't find him while he was flying up. But then he heard all the people yelling how everything in the bake sale was gone. Everything that has been eaten up. Kiro knew that this is a serious situation unless he finds Spinner and quick because Kiro panicked and then he suddenly got worried and pleaded his case to say it'll be all his fault. So meanwhile, back with Spinner, he's in one of the school's classrooms. He suddenly found a box of treats that had not been eaten yet, but that's about to change. So while Spinner was busy eating a box of treats that was in the classroom, back with Kiro, he finally catches up with Spinner. So Kiro found him and he says, "Oh, thank goodness I found you. I've been looking everywhere." Then Spinner gives Kiro a donut and says, "Do you want some?" "Okay, don't mind if I do," Kiro said. At first, Kero was going to eat the donut, but then he says, "Wait a minute. What am I doing?" he said. Then Kero says, "Listen to me very carefully," he told Spinner. "I want some answers right now." And Kero started asking him a bunch of questions of where did he come from and why did he come here at school and etc. Then he says, "Listen, we'll both be in serious trouble." So Kero tries to get Spinner out of the classroom before both he and Spinner get caught. But Kero had no such luck. But then Kero just heard voices coming from nearby, and he and Spinner knew that they had to find a place to hide. But that problem's been solved because Spinner's taking care of that for Kero when he started flying up in the ceiling. But when one of the students opened the door, both Kero and Spinner have flown right out past her. So now that both Kero and Spinner are outside, that's when Spinner started attacking him. So long story short, Kero knew that this could mean a problem for the bazaar and it'll be ruined unless something is done quick. His only chance is to get help, and he knows someone that could. And that person is Sakura. So back inside, after Sakura had heard the screaming that's coming from outside, she opens the window. And that's when Kiro shows up, and he tells her, "I think we got a problem." But then Sakura just grabs Kiro and then runs off. Now, Madison's really confused, and she had no idea what happened. So back with Sakura and Kero, that's when Sakura pleaded her case with Kero to say, "I knew I shouldn't have brought you along and etc." That's when Kero says, "Listen to me. You have to use the sleep card and it must be done quick." "Sleep card?" Sakura asked. "Yeah, that way you can put everyone to sleep that way," Kero suggested. "For what reason?" Sakura asked. "We don't have time to discuss this right now," Kiro said, and that's when Madison shows up to ask what was going on. Luckily for Madison, she brought her camcorder. So after Sakura thought about Kiro's suggestion, and she says, "Okay, if you say so." So, as always, after transforming her star staff from a star key, that's when Sakura transforms the sleep card. So when the sleep card's form comes out of nowhere, it did what it's supposed to do, puts everyone in the entire outside of the school's yard in the bake sale fall asleep. But just when Kiro was about to leave, that's when Sakura says, "Get back here." But he didn't have time to discuss the situation with Sakura. He has to find Spinner. And then before long, back outside, that's when Kiro finally finds him. So when Spinner looks at Kiro and demanded more sweets, that's when he started attacking him with his beam. But luckily for Kiro, he uses his enlarged wings to shield him from the attack. And that's when, before you know it, both Spinner and Kiro are attacking each other. First, Kiro attacks back, and then Spinner has his turn. But unfortunately for Kiro, Spinner got away. That's because he was rescued by someone or something. And then when he landed on the ground, he pleaded himself a case that for some strange reason the sleep card's effects didn't work on him. So when Madison and Sakura show up, and that's when Kiro told her that it's safe now, and that the creature he just saw, Spinner that is now gone. So Sakura had pleaded her case to tell Kiro that he's the one that's responsible for all this, and then asked, "Did you?" But Kiro pleaded his case to say he was innocent, he has nothing to do with it, and etc. He said it was someone else who did it, or something else. "Who's Spinner?" Sakura asked. So Kiro says, "Here, let me draw you a picture and I'll show you what he looked like." And so that's what Kiro did. He drew the picture of a creature that he had just met earlier when he was at the picnic basket just earlier that morning. And then bingo, he finished his picture a Spinner. But after looking at the picture, both Madison and Sakura had claimed their cases that that picture to him looks like Kiro himself. So despite Kiro's innocence, guess what this means? Kiro was soon dismissed by both Sakura and Madison. Next thing you know, both Sakura and Kiro were arguing with each other. First, Kiro goes first to plead that he's innocent. Then Sakura pleads her case to say, "You should have kept your promise, and then at least you could do is apologize for what you did, and etc." Then Kero has his turn to plead his case. I gotta get my hands on that spinner wherever he is. Because no matter how many times Kero tries to plead his case to say that he's innocent and that he told that to Sakura, but yet she never believes him. Oh, you're probably wondering where's Spinner? Why, in Eli's arms, fast asleep. And that's when Eli pleaded his case to say, I warned you that magic and spells won't mix. Well, no matter. You almost blew our mission today. So from now on, we have to be more careful. So Sakura has 21 star cards on the list so far, but there's still a lot to go. So that ends episode 10.